So you have your property rent ready, and now you are ready to start advertising to get a tenant in there. So I'm going to talk about how my management company advertises for a tenant, so that way you can use those tools to help you find a tenant on your place as quick as possible. Now, there's two common things that that you used to do 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that you just don't do anymore. The first is your newspaper. Well, let me back up. Everything I'm going to say apply to your area. So what works for me here in Charleston should work for you in your area, but it might not. And I'll kind of explain that as I get to some things that I think could vary depending on it. But newspapers. Nobody reads the newspapers for rentals anymore. Yes, people still read papers, but they're not in there looking for houses to rent. It's just a cost that you don't need. Don't even think about it. Don't do it. I mean, if there's some kind of crazy situation in your area where actually advertising in a newspaper works, then fine, by all means do it. But I'm going to be pretty sure it's the exception rather than the norm. Yard signs are the other item. My company rarely puts out yard signs. When we do put out yard signs that say for rent, it's because we want to pick up management of more properties in that neighborhood. It's not to attract tenants, because the tenants who call off of yard signs tend not to be the ones that you want to move in. I couldn't even tell you the last time we got a valid lead off of a yard sign. And the reason is that 80% of people have a smartphone now, and they can literally search for rental properties while they're sitting on their couch watching TV. So people don't drive around neighborhoods too much anymore looking for rental properties. Yeah, you'll get the occasional lead from it, but for the most part, they're not your number one driver of traffic. If you have a yard sign, go ahead and put it out. It doesn't hurt. It's not going to hurt you to advertise that way. I'm not anti-yard signs. It's just don't rely on that as your only means of advertisement. Just down the road from my office here, there's a rental property. I've driven by it now for 3 months, still for rent. And all they have is a yard sign as their sole means of advertising, because I haven't been able to find it online for rent. And so that yard sign's all they got, and it's sitting there vacant because of that. So if you want to use a yard sign, awesome, use it, but do not rely on that as your primary source of finding a renter, because it's going to take you a while, because renters just don't drive around looking for rentals. And again, the people who do call are most likely not going to be the ones that you want to do it. And if you have just the regular standard for rent sign, the one that you can go buy at Lowe's, Home Depot, you're going to get a lot of investors calling you like, do you want to sell? So you're not going to get the leads that you want, typically. So, all right. And then the other big caveat is, so the first two of those items, don't worry about yard signs use if you got it, and don't advertise in newspapers. It all falls under one thing, one big philosophy when it comes to advertising a business. And no matter what business you have, whether you're selling shoes, cookies, a catering service, or trying to rent a house, the rule in advertising is simple. Advertise where your customer is looking. And so your customers aren't looking in newspaper. That's why I say don't do it. Yard signs, they're not driving around looking. That's why yard signs are. I'm ambivalent to them. If you want them, great. If you don't, great. Doesn't matter. The third one, and this is the controversial one, because I'm a licensed property manager in charge in my company, licensed and all that kind of stuff. I do not advertise any of our rental properties in the MLS. And so MLS is where realtors list properties for sale and also for rent. I do not list in the MLS for numerous reasons. One, I don't list my own personal rental properties in there, so why would my management company do it for clients? It'd be an additional cost to them that they don't need to pay. Two, in my area and at the price point at which we manage, tenants are not looking in the MLS to find a rental on average. Now, sometimes a tenant will engage with a real estate agent to help them find a rental, but that's more the exception than the norm. And so we don't put anything in the MLS. Typically what happens is renters will find what they like, and then they'll send it to the realtor and say, hey, I like this rental. Why didn't you send it to me in the MLS listings? So then the realtor will call me and say, why is this not in the MLS? My client emailed me wanting to see this and it's not there. And I just tell them I don't list in the MLS, but yes, I will pay you a referral fee. And do not be afraid of paying a real estate agent a referral fee. Pay them because they're bringing you a tenant. And usually the referral fee is a percentage of rent. Maybe you could have a fixed fee, whatever you want it to be. But don't be afraid to pay that realtor if they're bringing you a tenant. Be willing to work with them, because then that gives you a higher probability of finding a tenant faster. So, but in our area, like I said, it's not common. Now, if you live in a city where everybody works, like if you're in New York, DC, Chicago, where it's more common to where renters work with an agent, and then the MLS becomes more important. So that's one of those things where what works in my area might not work in yours. And also the price point. We don't manage high-end homes. If you happen to own a rental property that is on the high end, then MLS might be the best option for you. So you really want to look at what works for your property. The bigger reason why I don't like the MLS, because yeah, I mean, if it's extra advertising, it'll help a little bit. Why not just put it up there? The bigger reason I don't like it and don't do it is because when a real estate agent brings a tenant, which I'll accept that tenant because I want to fill the unit, that real estate agent isn't making much money compared to when they list a home or they represent a buyer for a sale. They're just they're making a small bit in comparison. That realtor's goal is to get that tenant to buy a property in a year or two, preferably a year, sooner the better. And so that realtor is going to be actively working with that with that tenant for the next year to get them to buy a house, which means you're going to have more turnover. And well, actually, if you don't want to work with the real estate agents, that's a very good reason why not to work with them. I don't advocate that. I think if you're renting it on your own and an agent brings you a tenant, by all means rent to them, because I've had agents bring us a tenant and we've had that tenant for years. So it was because the tenant didn't want to buy, but that realtor was still trying to get them to buy. So that's the main reason I don't advertise in the MLS, because that agent who brings them will continue advertising to that tenant to get that tenant to buy. If a tenant wants to buy, that's great and wonderful. They can do that, after the year. But my goal, both as an investor and a property manager, is to try to place tenants who are going to stay for the long term. Now, that being said, when I advertise, we advertise 1-year leases. We don't make a requirement for longer leases. If someone tells me when we're viewing a property, yeah, we're looking just to rent for a year and then move, I'll still rent to them if they're the only applicant. But if I get 2 approved applicants, then I'm going to go with the one who hasn't indicated they want to buy in a year. Because even though people tell me they want to buy in a year, it's rare, not rare, less than half the time they go buy a house. Significantly less. I've not tracked numbers on that. And so one of the reasons is tenants will tell you when you show houses, I want to buy, because they think that's a great way to show the landlord that they are more financially viable than they are. I don't know why, but everyone says it. So I just gotta take that with a grain of salt and ignore it when people say that, for the most part. But when you advertise, don't advertise for more than 1 year. You want to advertise for 1-year terms. The reason being is most renters will live just about anywhere for 1 year, as long as they're comfortable with the neighborhood, the house is decent. They'll be like, hey, I'll live there for a year and see how it goes. If I like it, I'll keep staying. If I don't, I'll move on. But if you have a 2-year lease commitment minimum, they're going to be like, I don't know. 2 years is a long time. I don't know if I want to commit to that. The other reason would be because you cannot raise rent after year one. I mean, you can build it into your lease, but then tenants they're gonna be like, wait, what do you mean you're raising my rent in a year already? Even though you're going to raise your rent, it's better to not advertise it on the front end. So, all right, so you're not advertising in newspapers. You might or might not be using your yard sign, and you're not putting it in the MLS. So where do you advertise? This is up for great debate. Just do a Google search and look for properties in your neighborhood. You're gonna find Zillow is the #1 lead source in the area. That is a big debate within the property management and real estate world. Should you be using Zillow? Because depending on the state you live in, Zillow now charges, I think it's $8.99 per week to advertise a rental. Sounds like a lot, but when that's the #1 lead source, like they're our #1 lead source for tenants. Fortunately, we don't pay at this time due to we syndicate it through some other means, so we don't have to directly list, which saves our clients money. But if we had to pay, I recommend to all my clients to pay. The reason is you just save money by getting a tenant in there faster, because Zillow will then syndicate out to their entire network, and their network is pretty extensive, and it is, again, the #1 lead source. So Zillow is our primary lead source, so I recommend listing on there. Again, pay their fee, and I think like in Zillow has their rates vary by state. A lot of their states, let me scratch that. In South Carolina, your first rental, as long as you're only advertising one rental at a time, the fee's waived. The fee starts on your second property. So if you're only advertising one property, you're good. You don't have to pay the fee. So look at Zillow being your #1 advertiser. And the second, you can use it, you don't use it, you guys screen a little bit more. Oh, and I should have said this earlier. No matter where you advertise, be aware of fraudulent activity. I'm not going to get into what is fraudulent activity, what to look out for, what are the scams, because they're constantly changing. But be on the lookout. Make sure you meet people in person. Make sure you're not accepting checks from people you've never met. Just do your due diligence, use common sense, and protect yourself. Craigslist. We actually do get some leads through Craigslist from time to time. Really depends on the price point. The lower the price point of the house, the more important Craigslist is. Higher end homes get very little interest from Craigslist. But we do get some interest from Craigslist. So we still advertise on there. We use a website called Zumper.com. We get some leads through there. We use that. Abodo, ABODO.com. We've been using that one for a while. We get sporadic leads through there, but that one's not as common in our area where you live. That might be a little bit more important. And off the top of my head, I know there's a few more listing sites. I just can't think of them off the top of my head, because some of them are new, some of them go by the wayside. But then others get bought up. Like there's one called Lovely.com, I think it is, or Lively.com, I don't remember. But they got bought by a company and then they syndicate to it. So when you look at Zillow and you look at Zumper, look at what's called syndication. And you can see when you put that one ad there, where else does it go? And so it won't just be on that one website. It'll go out to 15, 4 other websites, 5 other websites. Zillow's network, I think, is about 10 or 12 websites, and Zumper's network is 4 websites. And so, it's pretty powerful to use those websites because it does go out to other places. Because we'll get leads from prospective tenants from a website that I have no idea what it is. Never advertised on it directly, but we get the leads from it because it's through that syndication on the websites that we do post to. And so Zillow's a big one, like I said. Zumper is a good one for us. We don't get too many leads directly from Zumper's website, but through their syndication, we do get leads through those websites, which is kind of nice. And once again, on the longer podcast, if you're listening to the podcast versus the video, I have to stop and drink some tea. So there's what the breaks are for. Yeah, I'm thinking, because now I'm drawing a blank now that I went on that. Oh, but the new Craigslist is Facebook. Don't care what you view it as far as the political means of it and all the other stuff that you see in the media about it. Facebook Marketplace is a great place to advertise your rental. Great place. And also find groups in your area. Here in the Charleston area, there's probably 10 rental groups that are like, hey, Low Country Homes for rent, Charleston Homes for rent, Mount Pleasant Homes for rent, Daniel Island Homes for rent, Goose Creek, like every city has one, it might have several. Then you can even get into specific neighborhoods that will have availables of postings for sale and rentals as well, and post into those groups. So you want to post on Facebook Marketplace and then all the groups that you can find. And what you can do is when you post to Facebook Marketplace, you can post it to up to 10 other groups just by clicking the buttons, and it goes out. If you want to advertise to more than 10, then you're going to have to post them individually. Bit of a pain, but oh well, who cares? Like, Facebook is the #1 volume source of leads for us. Now, when I say volume source, because Facebook Marketplace and those groups, Facebook groups, are the new Craigslist. And so we get a ton of inquiries from those, and very few actually turn out to result in showings, because people see the new posting pop up and they're just like, more info, more info, more info. And so regardless of where you advertise, I recommend having a canned response ready to go that you can just send off and just send off. So my property management company, it's actually automated on our end. Our email software does it the way I have it set up. Doesn't matter where that lead comes in, from wherever we advertise. So I'm not going to talk about where to advertise your properties anymore. We're going to put a fork in that one, because you can easily do that. I've talked about some of the common ones, why you should do them, especially Facebook. I highly recommend it. If you don't have a Facebook page, create a Facebook page just for advertising your rental on Facebook Marketplace. I don't care what else you do with it. At least do that. And now, you're going to have all these inbound leads coming into you because you put your property up there. I have 2 recommendations as far as what you do for communication. One, create a new email address, because you don't want them coming into your regular email address and getting kind of mixed up with everything else. And then you're not going to be able to, it's going to take time to sort it. And I get this all the time from, every now and then a client or tenant will be like, hey, don't send to my email address because it's clogged. And I'm like, well, we're a management company. We communicate through email, so I don't know what to do. Give us a new email. And they're like, yeah, I don't want to. Don't be that person. Use an email address that you can read. And I'd recommend a dedicated email, because you want to preserve that email for the long run. So that way, if a tenant ever comes back and says, hey, remember XYZ, you said blah, 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 and now all of a sudden you're sitting in court and you don't have records of your emails. So I recommend creating a brand new email account. If you're at 123 Main Street, go get 123 Main Street at google.com or at yahoo.com, outlook.com, whatever it is you want it to be. But get an email address specific to that property. And if you own more than one property, you don't need an email address per property. Have an email address for your properties, so that way you can bunch all those emails together in one spot, one email account, and you can quickly reference them. And you also know that if anything pops up there, you gotta respond. So the way my management company, no matter, back to the advertising, no matter where that email comes from, that prospective tenant gets an automated response. Because the prospective tenant didn't read whatever we put up there. Because we get some crazy questions. I'm like, yo dude, like people will email and ask us, what's the rent? I'm like, seriously? I'm thinking, seriously? It was in the listing. But they don't look, they just email. So we send an email, an automated email. And I am all about customer service, but I'm also about technology. And the way I merge the two is I'm very upfront. It says, it's a canned email. It says, thank you for inquiring about the property. To give you the fastest response possible, this is an automated email with more information about the property. Then I give them a little blurb about the property, and then I give them a link to our website that says, here's the full information, here's where there's more pictures, and we even have a video tour on the website you can go look. And then below that, I'll give a link to our listing criteria, and then I will, below that, say if you want to, here's some benefits of working with us. You might not have a website, so where else can you refer them? Well, then what you do is you include that information in that canned email. And you would say, our criteria is blah, 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 and you just list it out there, bullet point. That won't take up too much space. And then below that say, if you have any other questions or would like to schedule a showing, please respond to this email and we will make sure to give you a personalized response. Because that's what I do. And we have literally sent out thousands of auto responses. I'm trying to think of the numbers because 2 years ago, I looked to see how much what was doing for customer service. And at that time, because it was a new process, I think it started like 4 years ago, so I let it go for 2 years. And after it's like 900 and some emails, I think it was, we had one complaint because they got an automated response. One complaint out of 900, that's amazing. And I think the last time I checked, actually, I got a complaint last week because they didn't like the response because they asked some weird question that the autoresponder didn't answer. So I've had 2 complaints in 4 years. We're probably up to 3,000 or 4,000 automated responses with the two complaints. I mean, that's a pretty phenomenal unhappy rate, or whatever you want to call it. So automated emails aren't the end of the world. But the reason why I think that we have such a positive response to our automated emails, I intentionally set them up so they don't appear to be personalized. I'm not trying to trick them. I don't want them to think that it's personalized. I'm being very upfront and saying, this is an automated response. If this email doesn't answer your question, respond back and we'll personally respond. And so, because you can't respond to people 24/7, it's impossible. And so you do want them to have that information as fast as possible because someone else might respond faster and they'll schedule a showing and go there. So I want to give them that information as fast as possible. So I'd look at ways to set up, you should look at ways to set up an automated response within your email platform. My company uses email software that we pay for, but you might be able to set something like that through Gmail or not. And if you can't set up an automated response, I recommend having that email typed out so you can just copy and paste it and send it. Otherwise, you could get bogged down in responding to emails all day long. Now, if you're only getting 2 or 3 inquiries a day, then by all means, take the time and respond to those emails, but still work it off of a canned response. Then do respond individually. But if you put your property up and then all of a sudden you're getting 50 inquiries, you can't spend the time and read every single email. You're going to have to do that. Can't, especially on Facebook. You will get inundated with responses on Facebook because when Facebook pops up, it literally pops up and they just click a button and says, click, more info please. And so you're going to have to do something, otherwise you're going to get overwhelmed with the responses. Obviously people can call you, that's as well. You can have them call your cell phone. But I would recommend actually having that, like getting like a Google Voice number or something where it's a secondary phone line on your regular phone. So that way you can, if you don't want to get calls for a time period, you turn that off. In that way, because people will call you at 11 p.m. to inquire about your property. Do you really want someone waking you up at 11 p.m. to ask, hey, how much is the rent? And you're like, dude, chick, whatever, person. It was in the listing. Why are you calling me at 11 p.m.? Because it will happen, I promise. And so, so we've talked about where to advertise, what happens when people start emailing you. What should you advertise? Put up pictures. You need at least 8 pictures minimum. Your pictures, I do a Facebook photo album for the business that has like 50 pictures on there, which works really well. So that means there's a ton of pictures. It's great. Your pictures need to look like what the property is now. If your property shows, like tan walls, but you've since repainted to bright yellow and orange and pink, people are going to be turned off and they're going to leave and rent. You're going to not rent it because the house doesn't look like what they expected, and you're going to be wasting your time showing it. So make sure your photos look like the property. If your property hasn't changed in its appearance, like you haven't painted in 10 years, then fine, use 10-year-old pictures. That's 100% fine. Just make sure that the current pictures look like the property's current condition. And all listing platforms allow you to upload pictures. The thing I love doing, video tours. You can take you don't need a camera. You just whip out your smartphone, your iPhone, your Galaxy, whatever Pixel, whatever you have, and you just turn it on and you walk through the property holding your phone and talking while you go through there. Because how do you build rapport with a prospective tenant that you've never met and you're not going to talk to until they reach out to you? So what that video does is it does two things. One, it helps build rapport, showing that you're a real person, that you're there. I crack dumb little jokes as I do my video tour. Like if there's stairs, I'll walk up the stairs, my knees pop, and I'm like, my knees make noise. I'm 40 going on 80-year-old knees. You know, something like that, something, harmless and fun. Just trying to build that little rapport to start getting them to like me, to want them to come see the property and do business with me. But two, no matter how many pictures you put up, you're not going to get a good layout of the place. And so what I like to do is I start outside the property, and as we're going through, I say, hey, this is Aaron Silverman with Blue Water Property Management. We're going to take a tour of XYZ property today. I'm glad you're taking a look at it. And as I'm walking up to the front door, I'm commenting on the outside. I'm saying how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, what's the square footage. And then when we walk in, I then start talking about the house, like depending on the layout, describe the layout, and then we go through and we walk. Depending on the rooms, if it's a room that can be used for multiple things with the video, it's like, oh, this room is so cool. You can, this living room, you can put your TV over here and put your couches here. Or if you want to set it up this way, you can put your couch here and, put your TV here and you look this way. Or, hey, this room is flexible. Yeah, it's a dining room, but you could actually set it up as a home office as well. Or if you have little kids and you want to get them off in this room, so that way you can make that a kid-proof room and their little playroom, you can do that. Or you could turn it into your man cave. And so I try to talk there and give them, help visualize to that renter how they can see the home. And so it's free. It costs you nothing to do. It's literally my phone's over on my desk, but it's literally just your phone. You're not paying anything for it. Now we have editing software where we watermark it and all that kind of stuff. So no one's gonna if they're gonna steal our videos, it's gonna have our watermark. But you don't need that. You don't have to go to that extreme. You just take that and you upload it and give it to people so they can see it before they see the house. You put that in your automated email, but where are you going to list it? YouTube or Facebook? They're both free. I recommend YouTube so that way you can give them the link and then you can send that link in your automated email and you can include that link in your advertising. So YouTube is actually where my management company, we upload all of our videos to YouTube and then we embed them on our website. And then when we send the advertising link, they see it. But if you don't have a website, that's not an issue. Just email them the YouTube link, and in that way they can click that link and go to it. So I highly recommend those videos. It really sets you apart. I mean, videos are so damn simple, and most management companies in our area don't do it. It's insane how few do it. We've actually stepped up to doing 360 tours on Zillow. When a house is vacant, we never do a 360 tour when there's stuff in the house because of the detail that you get and people and what people can do and whatnot and zooming in. But we do videos with stuff in the house. And then the content of your listings. I used to put up these flowery descriptions. The sun comes through the window at the perfect angle and lights upon your face and warms it as you consume your breakfast and croissants and your coffee. I try to make it all flowery and whatnot. That is so unneeded nowadays. Prospective tenants are so busy, they don't give a darn about any of that stuff. They just want, what's the detail? So we put up one or two generic, very detailed things about the property. Hey, this is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in XYZ subdivision in an XYZ town. It has a fenced yard, an attached garage, boom, done. And then I say, what do I love about the house? And then I highlight one thing that I love. Unless there's two things that I love, then I'll point out, I love these two things. It's a coin flip. Now, don't say, what do I love, and just say the house. That's just stupid. Everyone, okay, whatever. And then don't say, what do I love about the house, and then list everything about the house. Foolish. Don't do that. Literally highlight the one thing that you love to tell them about it. And And that way you get them thinking about it. And that's where you get a little descriptive in there if you want. And then below that, just list the property details. How many bedrooms, list bedrooms, bathrooms, year built, when are you looking for someone to move in, 1 year lease. Then below that, we list all the details of the home, like what are all the rooms, and then what are all the appliances provided, and then what are all the features of the home. We just bullet point list them, so that way people, when they look at it on their phone, they can just scroll down and see it. Everyone's looking on their phones, and so they're not going to want to read paragraphs on their phones, and that way they can just go through, see the details, and say, yep, I like it. Now, you might want to do the flowery descriptions because you love the home. Please don't, because people aren't going to read it. They just don't care. As a real estate buyer, when I see these flowery descriptions of properties listed for sale, my only thought is, who still does this? This is just garbage. Quaint. It's a quaint little house. Quaint means small. And like we all know these terms now. Maybe your prospective tenant might not know it, but some of them will. Tenants are the average person is much smarter nowadays due to the internet, and so they research these things. And so when you use these terms to make the place sound better, they're gonna know quaint and cozy means small. Like, it just is what it is. Charming means it's pretty old and outdated. So using those descriptive words actually could potentially hurt you because people know what they're code words. So be sparse in your advertising. Just like I said, just be to the point and list it. All right, so we have covered where you advertise, what you should do when people respond, contact you with the autoresponders. We have talked about the pictures and video and the content you should put up, and that's advertising your property in a nutshell. I mean, there's a lot more nuanced stuff to it, but for the sake of time and not being here forever, I mean, we could talk about advertising a rental property for hours. Okay, let's talk about pictures and taking your pictures. I take pictures off my phone now. I have a real camera to take pictures, but my camera takes a better picture. And so for a rental property, it works. Again, I don't manage high end. If I managed high end, I would want professional grade pictures and bringing in a photographer to do that. But for the bread and butter that we manage, it's not necessary. It's just not needed. So you don't need a special camera. You don't have to go and hire a professional photographer to take pictures. Unless, again, that's what's normal in your area. It's not normal in our area. And I'm not dealing with high-end property, so you don't need to go overboard on taking the pictures. You need good pictures, though. You know, you want good, accurate pictures. I'm trying to think. I mean, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, like everything we covered is getting out there and then getting your property up and advertised. We've talked about where to advertise, the content that goes into your listings, the autoresponders to get back to them. All right, I've talked about this in the 1 minute tip portion. So you have your people, so this is also part of advertising, is scheduling your showings. This will be the last thing we talk about in advertising. So when people call or email to schedule your showing, you've done your pre-screening, which you should do. But that's not part of advertising, it's part of screening. So we'll talk about that on the next podcast when I talk about screening tenants. So, but you've pre-screened them and you're setting that appointment. The first person who inquires about a specific property kind of gets to pick when they want to see it. Say, okay, the schedules are kind of open this week. When can you see it? And if they say Thursday at 2, the next person who inquires only gets the option of 1:30 or 2:30 on Thursday. There's 3 reasons why I do that. There is one, I don't want to drive to the property 10 times in 1 week, because that's your biggest time waster in advertising a rental property, is just driving there. There's going to be a lot of tire kickers that want to see it. We try to weed them out with the pre-screeners and also the video giving an accurate view, but you're still going to get them. So showings are your biggest waste of time. So I try to eliminate that by clustering the showings. 2, if you have a tenant in the property, yes, you can require that they let you show whenever, because state laws allows you, if your state law allows that and you have it in the lease, At the same time, I don't want to annoy the tenants. I don't want to show up and bother the tenants 10 separate times. That would suck for them. And I still want to provide good service to my existing tenants because I want them to return the home in good condition to me, and I want them to be amicable when I'm trying to show the house. I don't want them to leave their dogs out and I have to deal with that. I would prefer if they left the house when I did showings. I can't force them to, but I'd prefer them to. But if I'm showing it 10 times in 1 week, they're not going to leave because they're like, I'm not leaving 10 separate times. And so I try to make it as easy on my tenants by intruding in the home as least as possible. The third, the main reason to do it, we are selling the idea of renting this house. That's what your advertising is for. And so I don't lie. I'm as truthful as I can be. If someone says, are there other people interested? I'll say, yes, other people are interested. Then they say, has anyone applied? I'll say, if we have applications, I'll say, yes, we've had one application. If no one's applied, I'll say, no one's applied yet. I don't lie. I'm not going to, if someone asks, has anyone applied? I'm not going to say, yeah, we've got 4 applications. You better get yours in. No, I don't do that. So what I love is when we have the 2 o'clock appointment goes well, they leave. Then the 2:30 appointment is coming in and they see each other and they cross. I didn't do this. They just created a sense of urgency. It wasn't what I said, because we all know salespeople will say whatever they want. Or let me rephrase that. We all worry that salespeople are saying anything just to get the sale. And again, you're selling the idea of renting your house. So in this role, you are a salesperson. People worry that the person is just going to say whatever. But when they see each other, they've now just put their own sense of urgency on getting that application done. I'm not kidding. Like, this is the honest truth. I showed a property one time many years ago. This is the only time it's ever happened. I look forward to it happening again. But showed this house to the lady, and she was like, well, my husband's not here. He'd like to see it as well. That really, well, scratch it. I always tell people, everyone who needs to see it needs to be there. We don't show the property twice. We don't make 2 trips to the property. We will if it's next to another showing, but we try to limit showings to 1 per prospective tenant because it's just a pain otherwise. So anyhow, she's like, oh, my husband couldn't be here, wouldn't I see it later? I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. I got my next showing. I'll show them. And she did the whole, okay, yeah, whatever. And so as she was walking out, the other people were literally walking up the driveway. And so I said bye to her, nice to meet her, contact me, blah, blah, blah. Showed the house, did the 15, 20 minutes. Came back around, came out with them. She was sitting in, she drove off. I saw her drive off. She actually went and filled out our paper application, because back then I only did paper applications. Now everything's electronic, but she had the paper application. She was sitting along the street, and those people left, and I walked up to the door. I was like, is everything all right? She said, yes, we want the house. Here's my application and my application fee. Start processing it, and then I'll get you my husband's by the end of the day. It went all because of that sense of urgency. I've had other people say they're going to apply once they've seen someone else and like, oh, I'm going to get that into you tonight, and they've went and applied that night. But the fact that she just drove around the block, filled out the paper application, and brought it back all in 10 minutes, in a 15-minute period, that's how you sell a rental. Create that sense of urgency. Me saying I was having another showing didn't do it. Her seeing the other tenants did it. So really think about clustering your showings. Not as a convenience factor to you, but as part of your advertising and selling that idea of renting. So that's it on advertising. I could go on and on for a long time on it, but you don't want to listen to me ramble forever. If you have questions or would like to dive more into one of these specific topics, please reach out to me. You can find my contact information at successfulrental.com. You can sign up for the newsletter. Actually, that's the best way to do it. You sign up for the newsletter, you get an automated response that says, thanks for signing up. What's your number one question when it comes to rental properties? And then you can email and ask that question. That actually will be the best way to get a response from me. Or you can find me on Twitter. But really, my Twitter stuff is more of me just ranting about soccer. And so I do comment on real estate stuff as well. But successfulrental.com, sign up for the newsletter, and that way you can shoot me some emails. Or you can go join our Facebook page over at facebook.com/successfulrental. Appreciate you taking the time to listen to this. Love to hear your feedback and your thoughts on advertising a rental property. Have a good one.